Welcome back to another Peacemaker Season 2 breakdown with Episode 8, the final episode for the season. And I'm disappointed that it's the final episode. I want more episodes. Mostly because they left us on a cliffhanger, and the fact that it feels like they were just setting up another show and left a bunch of plot threads open-ended. So in this video, we will be breaking down the episode, going over all the Easter eggs and references throughout it, as well as breaking down that ending and how it sets up Season 3 and the future of the DCEU. So with that, let's jump into the start of the episode where it starts off a month before the events of the series. Well, at least this season, where it takes place at Big Belly Burger. We get to see inside a Big Belly Burger for the first time in this universe so far, even though we've gotten a bunch of references to it. And it's Peacemaker and Harcourt on a date, where they're getting absolutely smashed as Peacemaker embarrasses Harcourt by saying to her in a public restaurant, and then she talks about how she doesn't want to be anyone special. Mostly because she's not ready for any type of relationship after Rick Flag's death, and she feels like she's a broken person. She even mentions how she's still mad at Adebayo for what she did during the last season when she announced to the world about Amanda Waller's Task Force X and what they were doing with Project Butterfly. But I loved when they got smashed and they left that one guy made a creepy comment to Harcourt and she was ready to throw hands, but Peacemaker had to stop her, and I love how he's like, hey, I'm not protecting you. I'm protecting that guy. Knowing that she'd kick his ass. So I love how it kind of starts off that way. You know, they end up going to a rock show and it kind of cuts off there. We also get a little tidbit of information where Harcourt's like, you gotta be nicer to Vigilante. Pretty much showing that Peacemaker has been piece of shit to Vigilante. He always has been. I do like how Harcourt pointed it out to him, being like, hey, you need to be better friends with him. So hopefully in the future, he will. Then we get back to present day while he's in the prison, and he doesn't want to see any of his friends because he thinks that he's the angel of death because everyone around him dies. And we get to see more of that trauma get brought up this episode where he feels like anyone around him dies and it's his fault. So he's just dealing with all that trauma, but all the family members that have died with him that he just can't overcome. But then we get to see Argus traveling within the quantum unfolding chamber, and I really do not understand why these guys are wearing hazmat suits, because Harcourt and them and Peacemaker were all walking through it just fine, and it wasn't like causing them to like get weird mutations or anything else happening to them. But I guess they're just playing it better safe than sorry. We see that Harcourt and Economos are back to working with Argus. After everything that went down with Peacemaker getting arrested, we get to see that Sidney Hamperson is also working with them, and we also get to see a bunch of other characters return from Superman, which is just Lex Luthor's goons. We even get to see Otis once again. So Rick Flag Sr. is working with Lex Luthor and his goons, open up different portals and check out different universes. And while they're going through these universes, we get a Pepe Le Pew reference with Flurry mentioning it. We get a stripper named Mothra reference, which I'm pretty sure is just a reference to Mothra. And then we also get to see that they go into door 22, which ends up leading to a Candyland. And you know what? I was trying to figure out what the hell these little aliens were that were attacking them, but I couldn't find any references online. So if you know who they might be a reference to, unless they're just some random alien that James Gunn threw into this, let me know down in the comments. But like, they got absolutely mauled by those things. R.I.P. Klein, because he got his face ripped to shreds by them, and they were little horrifying creatures. And I'm still very curious to like, what were they? Were they supposed to be a reference to a DC universe? Or were they just a fun little alien thing they threw in to be in Candyland? And when they die, they make a little twinkle sound, which I thought was funny. The universe was interesting. I totally thought with the universes they'd be going into, we get a little bit more comic references to stuff because they're going into the multiverse. So I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get like little references to different things. But I heard some people complaining like, hey, at least it's not a bunch of multiverse slop like we've gone before. But I'm like, hey, if we got little comic book nods, that would have been cool and I would have been happy with that. But hey, it's okay. We got some few cool different doors. Because when they kept going and going into other ones, we get to see the Crypt Keeper make his return and everyone just nonchalantly doesn't bother it. I'm actually shocked they didn't try to kill it. We get a universe that has a black hole in it, just like the black hole we saw in Superman. And even Lex Luthor mentioning that it looks promising because they had a black hole in his pocket universe. It's like, okay, this is where we can throw our metahumans and get rid of them. Then we see an apocalyptic skull universe, which at first reminded me of Cersei's vision, just because of all the spikes in the ground. It also made me think of Brainiac because of the giant skulls, even though they were like proper skulls and not mechanical. We also get to see a zombie world, which could be a reference to DC's Deceased, which is the zombie universe where all the heroes get turned into zombies because of the anti-life equation. But the thing is, while this is all going on, we get a few confirmations that Bordeaux was sleeping with Rick Flag Sr., so she was seeing him after we saw her kind of romanticize him a couple episodes ago. And we just get to see a bunch of Argus agents continuously die and Rick Flag Sr. not giving a single shit and having a ball of a time with Lex Luthor's goons. So showing him go into that more villainous route, where after dealing with Peacemaker, he doesn't want to deal with anyone like him anymore, and he's just going full into the I hate metahumans with Lex Luthor. Because while this is all going on, we do get to see Harcourt and Bordeaux find a peaceful universe, at least seemingly, that they can breathe the atmosphere, and we get to find out that Rick Flag Sr. named this planet Salvation, where they're going to be dumping metahumans to get rid of them. Because in the comics, there is a run called Salvation Run, where this actually led into Countdown to Final Crisis, with Amanda Waller and Rick Flag, through Checkmate and Suicide Squad, launching a campaign to round up the world's most harmful supervillains and deport them off-planet, which is something that he's doing here. So it's definitely tying into that little comic run that they had, and it's really interesting to see what they're doing, especially with Checkmate being referenced again in this episode. Plus, we got to see the secretary that we first saw on Superman Return, as he calls out Rick Flag Sr.'s plan, like, hey, you're going right into Lex Luthor now, like, you're going into what he's doing, so showing that Rick Flag is kind of going down into the more villainous route. Plus, they reference how this is a prison for metahumans, because the Arkham and Belle Reve could no longer hold any villains because they always escape, which is just a classic trope from DC Comics and now the DCEU, where villains are always escaping from both Belle Reve and Arkham Asylum. We also find out that the Superman incident actually happened a month ago, so Peacemaker Season 2 takes place a few weeks to a month after Superman. Now, with all this going on, too, with him working with Lex Luthor, this is definitely teasing how Lex Luthor is going to be getting out of prison to be in Man of Tomorrow to face off against Superman and then ultimately team up with them to go against Brainiac. Rick Flag Sr. is getting lost in the sauce for Lex Luthor's plans and is working with him to ultimately throw a bunch of supervillains and other metahumans into another dimension. Now, as I jumped a little too forward, let's jump back and catch up with the 11th Street Kids, because we get to see that Eagly is depressed because Peacemaker's no longer around. I felt so bad for Eagly, but I like that Economos is taking him in and taking care of him. You know, he's had his troubles with Eagly before, where Eagly has attacked Economos, but now it's like they're friends. You know, he's trying to take care of him. And we get to see that kind of come full circle by the end of the episode, where Eagly puts his wing on Economos, showing that they've bonded, and that's like a really nice moment. We also got to see Abadeo going to see Vigilante to get her hands on his blood money. But I do love how Adebayo was like, hey, you gotta be nicer to your mother. And it just, like, feels really bad, because, like, Vigilante is terrible to his mother, even though his mother's such a sweet woman. But we also get to see that he's playing a Nintendo Switch, and he references playing Princess Peach Showtime. So he's a big Princess Peach fan. But we see that Adebayo wants to help Peacemaker and get Vigilante to figure out a way to do it, but Vigilante is like, nah, it's fine. It's all part of his plan, believing in his friend, thinking he knows what he's doing, even though Peacemaker is just isolating himself and removing himself off the playing board because he thinks he's the angel of death. I like how they want to use the blood money to hire a proper lawyer. But Vigilante doesn't want to use it because he thinks it's going to cause a curse on him and his family, and I love how Adebayo uses this to her advantage, because he says he thinks that they could break out Peacemaker or threaten the judge and kill his family to let Peacemaker out. And I love Adebayo's like, aren't you supposed to be a hero? And he's like, yeah, every fiber of my being. So it's funny how Vigilantes will do these like very criminal things and actual like horrible things, but he still sees himself as a hero as long as he's doing what is right. But Adebayo uses this reverse psychology on him to say that she's a better friend. She's willing to get a curse on her to help Peacemaker, and that makes Vigilante completely swap sides because he's like, no, I'm his best friend. So I love how it's easy to manipulate Vigilante into doing this, mostly because he's Peacemaker's best friend. So he's gonna do and take that risk for him rather than Adebayo doing it. So just a nice fun reverse psychology moment. Then Adebayo bails Peacemaker out with that money. He goes to get Eagly and then leaves town because he wants to separate himself from his friends so none of them die. But that's where it leads into Harcourt going to Big Belly Burger to meet with Bordeaux, because Bordeaux is fed up with this. She fills Harcourt in about the planet being a prison for metahumans, and the fact that she doesn't really believe in what Rick Flag Sr. is doing. And she's mad that all her friends died for a prison. They weren't doing something to help the planet out and like get resources and stuff. No, they were traveling into these portals and these other dimensions, and people were just dying. She lost people. And, you know, that actually affected her, where that made her flip sides towards 11th Street Kids, because they were actually trying to do stuff that was better than Rick Flag Sr., who was kind of going down a villain route. And I like how Harcourt takes her to Adebayo, so because Adebayo has the idea to come up with Checkmate, their new intelligence agency that they create at the end of the episode. And when the episode was going on, I'm like, they're going to make Checkmate. They're going to make Checkmate. And then when the episode ending came, I'm like, I was right, which is kind of an obvious thing that was coming because Adebayo was trying to do her consulting, and she had those steps going in there. And by the end of the episode, and what they set up in this episode about Rick Flag and Argus kind of going down an evil route, it makes sense for them to make their own intelligent agency, especially with contacts they already have, that they could set up and, you know, do the right thing and make the world actually better. But during this as well, we do get a flashback back to the cruise where Peacemaker and Harcourt having a very good time, and then they end up making out. But she ends up ditching Peacemaker because she can't deal with the emotions she's coming up with at the moment, because she couldn't accept what was going on because Rick Flag was killed by Peacemaker, somebody she cared about. So I like how it's her conflicting feeling throughout this entire season that finally came to a close by the end of the episode, where we do get to see her struggling with her feelings for Peacemaker, the man who killed her friend, and how she has to overcome that because she sees that Peacemaker is actually a good guy. He's actually caring. He actually cares about her. So it's a lot of interesting character development for this character this season alone. And speaking of character development, we also got that with Adebayo, who went to her wife Kia's house to leave her. Mostly because she always loved her. She will always love her. But both of them have two different ideologies of what they want to do. Adebayo still wants to do her security consulting. She still wants to make her business. But Kia wanted to own a pet store with her. It shows us that she has to let her wife go so both of them can live their life. Otherwise, they're going to be miserable. They're just not meant to be. And it was like a really touching moment for the characters, and also calls back to last episode where Judo Master talked to Adebayo about her relationship and made her realize what she had to do. So just some really nice moments for the characters in this episode, and I like all the character moments were top tier. James Gunn does a great job doing some broken emotional characters. But then we get to go back to the Argus site where they need to distract Happerson in order to track down Peacemaker's location, because Bordeaux has access to the information where the tracker is in Peacemaker. Where Economos, it's a hilarious scene. He is so bad at lying and distracting that he just fumbles his way through it and makes it so awkward, but it's hilarious to watch. But they end up finding Peacemaker, and I love that everyone just kind of tries to stop him, but Peacemaker says, nope, not talking to you. And then Vigilante comes and tackles him, tases him, and takes him down. Hilarious moment. Love how wild Vigilante can be, because Vigilante's always a wild card, and I love the random shit he always does. But then we get to like the big moment for the episode, for at least the character stuff, where Peacemaker is still questioning who he is, because he doesn't want to see anyone. He feels like he's cursed, and he talks about the trauma of killing his own brother, killing Rick Flag, who he befriended, killing his own father, and then killing his brother and father again. Which, I love that Adebayo's the one to call them out, saying you're not following who you truly are. You're trying to go into stuff that people think you are, because he went to the other universe because he was beloved. He wasn't really following who he was. He just wanted to be loved by people. And when he killed his brother, he was following his father's orders. So he hasn't really done what he wants to do. And when he's around his friends, Adebayo's noticed that he's a good person when he's himself. He can create miracles, just like last season, the miracle she saw of an eagle and a human hugging. So I love that they called that back up from last season, because that was such a wild moment for Adebayo to see him hugging his eagle that no one would normally ever see. And then we just get the moment of everyone saying that they love him. Vigilante says it's his best friend. Adebayo says Economos has put himself in the line countless times, even though he's the biggest coward. So showing that they all care about him. I mean, Harcourt being like, I care about you too. So this really nice moment of them all coming together to tell Peacemaker they care about him, showing that no matter what, they will always be there for him. And it was just like a really good bonding moment for all of them. And I really liked how they've developed the characters over the last 2 seasons. Now it's time for them to make their own decisions and what they really want to do, which sets up what happens after this. But before that, we do get to see Peacemaker ask Harcourt if it meant something, the kiss they shared on the boat. And Harcourt said it meant everything, showing that she's always loved Peacemaker. She's had those feelings, but she doesn't know how to deal with them. They're conflicting, and she doesn't know how to move forward because of what he did to Rick Flag. But then she finally realizes what she needs to do, and when she says that, and they end up getting to be together. Which then we get to see Peacemaker finally be happy as he dances with joy after dealing with all the trauma. He finally has his friends, he has a woman he loves, and it's just a really nice moment to set up the 1 week time skip where we get to see the 11th Street kids using the blood money to make their own company, which ends up being none other than Checkmate. Which Checkmate in the comics was created by Amanda Waller as an offshoot of Task Force X, and now it's been made by her daughter. So they changed it up a little bit, but it's cool to see how it's still kind of tied to Amanda Waller. And in the comics, each of the people in the organization are named after chess pieces, like bishops who oversee missions behind the scenes, rooks plan the missions, knights carry out the missions, pawns are the support staff. So I wonder if they're going to be using those terms in the future for possibly a Checkmate TV series or Peacemaker Season 3. Plus, during that entire scene, we got those little good moments. Bordeaux is now working with them because she's going to believe in creating a better world with them. Flurry and Judo Master join as well because they don't agree with what Rick Flag Sr. is doing, and Judo Master kind of bonded with them when they were in the other world. And we get to see Vigilante and Flurry having a very good moment talking about spiders. So these two idiots can now talk about their random facts about spiders and anything else because that's what they do. And maybe Flurry will finally understand his bird blindness is dumb, and that he'll understand that Eagly is an eagle. Now, during all this, we get to hear the theme music for Season 2 for the intro that's played by Foxy Shazam, who also make an appearance in this episode. So pretty cool that they put that in there and tying back to the intro for it as well. And we also, like I said before, we get to see Eagly befriending Economos. So just like this really nice moment because Economos took care of Eagly, and now they've kind of bonded. Now, also in the comics, when it comes to Checkmate, before I forget to mention it, Peacemaker was also part of Checkmate there before, so it makes sense that Sasha Bordeaux and Peacemaker are part of the organization because they were both part of it in the comics. So a really nice moment to set that up, but then that leads into the final moment of the episode where Peacemaker gets taken to Argus by Rick Flag Sr. and chucked into the planet Salvation, using him as a test subject to figure out what it might do to the human body in that other dimension. And then we get to find out that Rick Flag Sr. is doing all this because it's revenge for his son Rick Flag. And then we get to hear monsters in the distance, which I first thought, holy crap, those are dinosaurs. And then when I realized it's based on the Salvation run of the comics, where the supervillains all get thrown over there, that would make it so that these monsters are around the planet. Now in the comics, the planet is actually filled with dangerous killer beasts. And the villains in that comic are forced to deal with their circumstances and confront a community entirely composed of dangerous and psychotic criminals, where the greatest danger to them is a difficult tie between the world trying to kill them and them themselves. So it's the villains having to create their own communities and then fight each other, but also fighting the other inhabitants of this world. So it's definitely setting up something interesting for the next season, where season 3 will probably be the 11th Street Kids and Checkmate trying to find Peacemaker. And we'll also get to see Peacemaker surviving on that world, creating his own structures, his food sources, fighting off monsters, and trying to survive until people can come and get him, or he can find a way home. Now, I'm sure that's not going to be the entire season, because they still have another plot point that they never dealt with, which with Keith, he's going to want his revenge on Peacemaker, and I totally thought he was going to show up at some point in this episode and cause disturbance, especially with it being an hour long. But instead, we dealt with wrapping up the character arcs, dealing with all of that, and then setting up the next season and the future of the DCEU. Which I'm sure when it came to season 3, we are probably also going to be getting a mention of Superman, Man of Tomorrow, if it comes out after that. And on top of it, possibly like the TV series Green Lanterns and other series that take place on Earth. If Keith does come into the next season, and we do get the Nazis invading Earth 1, we could be getting G.I. Robot next season to fuck up some Nazis, which would be really cool. On top of it, it could also just be leading into a Checkmate TV series rather than Peacemaker Season 3, because now that they're part of the same organization, they don't necessarily need to do Peacemaker Season 3, so we'll see what James Gunn has cooking up. But I'm really excited to see what they're going to do next. Like, I'm very curious to see, like, how they're going to be dealing with this going forward, because in the DCU, they've set up the alternate dimension, putting supervillains in that other world. So I'm curious by the time next season comes, that are we going to get a bunch of supervillains already put in there and see some of the big rogues that we've seen from the past? Will this be a movie that they deal with this and then we'll go back into a series once Peacemaker gets off the planet? Or are we going to have something centralized on that planet first and then go back to Earth 1? Like, so many questions, and I'm sure in the coming weeks we will find out from James Gunn, like what his plan is, after a couple of days at least, to let the spoilers kind of go out there. But I'm very curious to see what they're going to be doing. So at the end of the day, they set up Superman Man of Tomorrow with Lex Luthor getting out of prison, but with also Argus working with Lex Luthor. I'm sure that's going to have a big role with Superman Man of Tomorrow. The multiverse, of course, and other dimensions, possibly sending supervillains over there. So I wonder how Superman's going to feel about that when he hears that metahumans have been shunted off to another dimension. And then on top of it, they set up Checkmate to be within this universe, helping make the world a better place, which these people will actually be heroes, doing heroic stuff because all our characters are good people. So curious to see how they're going to involve that in the new DCU. Some fun stuff coming. I was actually shocked they got rid of Peacemaker, so it makes me wonder, again, how long is it going to be till we find out what happens to him? When is he going to come back? Is he going to appear in everything else? Because Peacemaker is now a staple for DC when it comes to the DCU because of how good the show has been. Even though the final episode wasn't as climactic as I thought it was going to be, the character moments made it way worth it. What did you think of this episode? What did you think it set up for the DCU, for the Peacemaker Season 3, or Checkmate series? And were there any other Easter eggs and references you noticed? Let me know in the comments down below and we'll talk about it. Thanks for watching. If you like this breakdown and the breakdowns I've done, make sure to hit the like and the subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot, and you get to stay up to date with my DC, my Marvel breakdowns, my other movie breakdowns, as well as my anime reactions when I do those. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you later when it's time to break down another DC, Marvel, or another movie.